This is Dateline Tuesday, April 21st, 1998. Tonight,
Jonesboro. Children accused of killing children. What do you do with such troubled kids? Some states now use private for-profit programs to treat children who commit crimes. He calls that the real crime.
Well, I've also called it the interstate trafficking in children for profit.
He says this private youth center was overrun by gangs, violence, and rapists. And a former staffer says those in charge didn't care.
They didn't want to know what was happening in those rooms at night. They were afraid to know.
Chris Hansen with children, crime, and hard time.
from Studio 3B in Rockefeller Center, here is Jane Pauley.
Good evening. Children killing children. In the past several months, it's happened in Jonesboro, Arkansas, Paducah, Kentucky, and Pearl, Mississippi. And each time you may have wondered, what should society do with such troubled and violent children? Do you put them in prison or juvenile correction centers, or do something else? In recent years, and with high hopes, several states have turned to private programs, places run by profit-making corporations, but not without problems, sometimes very serious problems. Here's Chris Hansen.
Dr. Ronald Davidson is on a mission. The University of Illinois psychiatrist has become a fierce advocate for that state's most troubled kids.
You got a little problem with the outlet here?
Hired by the state of Illinois, Davidson has spent the last few years inspecting more than 100 privately run treatment and detention centers housing Illinois kids.
Still not a good idea to keep it here.
He built a tough reputation inside the state, but it's his stinging attacks across state lines that are stirring up some of the most controversy. For some time now, Illinois, like other states, has found itself overwhelmed by the numbers of troubled children. And instead of building more treatment centers, it decided to turn to private corporations in other states. In just 1 year, Illinois spent $60 million exporting 800 kids to places like Florida, Arizona, and Colorado. But when Davidson was asked to evaluate shipping kids to those private facilities, he reached an early conclusion.
Well, I've also called it the interstate trafficking in children for profit.
What's wrong with taking a troubled kid and sending him or her to Colorado or Arizona or Texas, if in fact there's a facility there for treatment?
Good question. We're talking about salvaging the lives of children. And you cannot do that by putting a child on an airplane as if he were some toxic waste in a sealed container and dropping him in Texas or some other state.
Welcome to Brush, Colorado, home to the High Plains Youth Center. Although it's called a youth center, High Plains is really a for-profit juvenile prison holding kids with criminal records. Its mission, according to its own brochure, to change the behaviors and values of delinquent kids, an attractive alternative for some states. But at $175 a day per kid, the treatment doesn't come cheap. High Plains was earning several $million a year by taking in Illinois kids. That is, until Ron Davidson came to town.
We are respectful young men and treat others the way we want to be treated.
High Plains is owned by the Rebound Corporation. It's home to young murderers, rapists, robbers, and drug dealers from 20 states. By 1995, there were 41 Illinois kids at High Plains.
This was a very troubled facility that in many ways had slipped out of control and was not providing adequate care in any stretch of the imagination.
Davidson's investigation in late 1995 detailed evidence of drug use, homemade weapons, and gang activity inside High Plains. He concluded that there was a consistent and disturbing pattern of violence, sexual abuse, clinical malpractice, and administrative incompetence.
Virtually every state that had kids in the program came out and did their own independent audits, and those audits were widely different from the audit from Illinois.
Bill Botkin was director of planning for Rebound when Davidson did his audit. We interviewed him last year for this story. He has since left the company. Rebound called Davidson's investigation inaccurate, biased, and malicious, and notes that High Plains passed a Colorado audit prior to Davidson's inspection.
And I guess the determination is this kid changed? Is he successful? Is he better off now than when he was when he started the program? And the answer has been yes.
Botkin cites studies showing that 70% of High Plains kids had not reoffended within 1 year after leaving the program.
I enjoy working with kids.
Staff members gave Dateline a guided tour of High Plains.
Is this tough work?
Yes, it is. It's tough work, but it's also very rewarding work. We see the fruits of our labor.
We were also provided a group of High Plains inmates who talked about their treatment. One had been convicted of rape, another murder.
Do you feel now for your victim?
Yeah, I do. You know, I know what I did was wrong, you know, and I'm not going to do it again.
My treatment now is successful. You know what I'm saying? With a lot of my problems, like when I first came here, had a quick temper, you know, towards my easy anger. And I can say this program has really helped me out a lot.
What did you find when you took the job?
I found chaos.
We spoke with a group of former Rebound employees. Most of them had quit the company. 2 were dismissed for cause. They all told us about serious problems at Rebound facilities.
They don't count on people taking a stand.
I really liked my job. I thought I did a good job. But with the blatant denial and the, you know, covering things under the carpet, I realized that I couldn't be loyal to them as an employee anymore.
One striking example, a High Plains inmate named Thomas. For about a year beginning in 1994, according to staff logbooks, Thomas was repeatedly beaten and raped by his roommates and threatened with being set on fire. Lisa Hansen was a High Plains counselor at the time.
Was it your feeling that they knew what was happening to Thomas and they were allowing it to happen?
Yes. I felt that they were allowing it to happen and they didn't want to investigate it. They didn't want to know. They didn't want to know what was happening in those rooms at night. They were afraid to know.
High Plains officials say while no inmates are supposed to be having sex, in Thomas's case, it was consensual, and the situation was corrected.
My problem was the alcohol, then came the gangs, and you mix them two together, and that spells violence.
Steve Ashcraft was one of those Illinois kids sent to High Plains. He landed there after racking up a series of juvenile arrests for violent crimes.
I could have just stayed here.
Ashcraft admits he's partially at fault for not turning himself around at High Plains. He says there were some devoted staff members and teachers who furthered his education. But Davidson, Illinois' watchdog, found many of the staff unprepared to handle young criminals and their problems. For Ashcraft, it was alcohol.
I knew I had an alcohol problem. There's nothing that they had that could help me work on it.
In the time since Ashcraft left High Plains, Colorado audits of the facility show improvement. Even Illinois officials approved a corrective action plan by the facility. But former Rebound employee Lori Sturer, let go by the company, says audits can be deceiving. She claims she was told to lie to inspectors and falsify records at another Rebound facility.
That's a serious charge.
I've done it.
You were told to falsify records?
Yes. We know when they're coming, and so for weeks up until that audit, we're faking things. We look really good on paper.
Some former Rebound employees have told us that they were told by higher-ups to falsify records and documents before inspections.
We have never heard that allegation. That's certainly a very serious allegation. For us, that would be grounds for dismissal.
Have you drawn all these since you've been here at High Plains?
Yeah.
The company insists that as soon as problems are pointed out, changes are made. Colorado audits do show that in recent years there has been a reduction in violence at High Plains, as well as improved treatment programs and better staff training.
We don't deny that there were issues here that we were working pretty aggressively on when Illinois came in and did their report.
But why has it taken outside investigators to come here and point out these very, very drastic problems?
We learned that lesson very painfully, and as a result of that lesson, we have set up that internal quality assurance.
But now, High Plains is under attack again. Colorado and other states are pulling their kids out of the facility. The action is the result of a scathing report triggered by the recent suicide of a 13-year-old High Plains inmate.
This child should have been on suicide watch, and that, in fact, this child should not have died.
Colorado officials say between 1993 and 1998, there have been a dozen substantiated cases of child abuse at High Plains. Information kept secret by local authorities. Information that ultimately became public after Dateline started asking questions of state officials. Colorado investigators say in the last year, High Plains staff have physically assaulted kids and had sex with them inside the facility, in addition to providing them with cigarettes, alcohol, and pornography. Rebound says staff involved in these incidents have either quit or been fired, but the company acknowledges it is the target of a new criminal investigation. Dateline asked Rebound for another on-camera interview regarding this latest round of allegations. The company declined. A spokesperson did tell us, though, that the Colorado audit was flawed, overstated, and that in some cases the child abuse allegations are not clear-cut. As for Steve Ashcraft, he found trouble again soon after coming home from High Plains. Our interview with him took place just 2 weeks after he got out of this Illinois adult prison where he was serving time for armed robbery. The state of Illinois paid somewhere around $115,000 for you to spend 22 months at High Plains. What did the state get for its money?
Nothing. Dead weight. Taxpayers just lost a lot of money.
Yeah. There is, of course, no guarantee that Steve Ashcraft would have turned out any better if he'd been confined closer to home. But Illinois officials agree with him that the investment they made to send Steve and other juveniles out of state was misguided. From now on, those officials plan to do whatever it takes to keep the state's troubled kids in Illinois.
Very difficult.
And for Ron Davidson, who's been crusading for better treatment and facilities for the youngsters in trouble, it comes down to keeping a closer eye on the kids and on the money spent to treat them.
The bottom line for us is that we are going to do whatever we have to do to make sure that Illinois' kids are not treated like crash test dummies for corporations that don't know how to get their act together.
Late yesterday, Colorado officials announced they were shutting down the High Plains Youth Center and revoking its license to operate. A spokesman for the Rebound Corporation says the company will comply with the order, but claims officials violated state law by not holding a hearing before the shutdown. As for Illinois, since Dr. Davidson's initial report on High Plains in 1995, the state has reduced the number of children it places at out-of-state facilities from 800 to less than 200.